And welcome to another episode of What the Tech. I'm your host, Rolando Rosas, and today you're in for a special treat. We've got super coach to the Fortune 500 and former LinkedIn executive, Steve Cadigan. He's weighing in on the future of work and what it all means to employers as well as prospective employees. But before we get to all of that good stuff with Mr. Steve Cadigan, let me just first welcome in our Instagram viewers who are watching us live today on Instagram. You've got a front row seat to some good action. So I'm going to try to put you over here, and hopefully this camera will not move, but I cannot confirm that it will stay there. But hopefully you guys on Instagram will get a back seat as well as front row, both to the action. And it looks like you're not, because that camera is not going to stay up. That's what happens when you do live. So let me see if I can put it over here. All right, maybe it'll stay now. And joining me with Steve to make sure I stay on task today is my co-host, Dave Kelly.
Hey, I can only do my best to keep you on task. I can't hold the camera for you, but it's pretty cool that we're on multi platforms this afternoon. Very, very cool.
Yeah,
hey, Rolando,
man.
we're talking about the future of work. I know that we've been talking about, this work at home phenomenon for quite a while. A lot of the devices that we're promoting, help with this type of new culture, work culture that we have.
Makes it easier for sure.
With Steve Cadigan on board today, really excited to hear his perspective on things. Before we pull him in, why don't we jump into the trivia question of the day?
All right, let's go for it. You want me to do it, or you want to do it?
So I'll throw it out there. So
okay.
among these four companies, which has the highest percentage of employees who want to work at home permanently? These are all the big ones: Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Salesforce. We'll find out later.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you, Dave. I'm curious to find out what's going on there. So let's see. We're going to throw it to the, okay. So what we've got for you in store today, let me tell you a little bit about Steve. Steve is one of the foremost, excuse me, let me grab a little sip of water. Steve Cadigan is one of the foremost authorities on the future of work. I'm super passionate about that, and I'd love to hear more about that. He is renowned for leading LinkedIn's talent push from around 400 people to 4,000 in 3.5 years. Amazing feat by itself, and was responsible for architecting its world famous company culture. We're also going to get into that in his book. He talks a little bit about that in his book called Quake. Steve has spent the last 30 years leading talent and culture at Fortune 500 companies. In other words, he's a super coach to the Fortune 500. He offers strategy and insights on talent in times of disruption through keynote speaking, seminars, and workshops. And what you're looking at on your screen right now is his new upcoming book, Quake. We had a sneak peek at it, read through it a little bit. We've got some questions for him, so you'll want to stick to the end when we talk about his book and what his thoughts are inside of that book. And so without further, and by the way, this book is available for pre-orders. I believe it's pre-orders right now through Amazon and also at Barnes and Nobles. It's scheduled for release on August 3rd, and we have the privilege of having Steve Cadigan on with us today. So come out of the green room, Steve.
Hey guys.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. Where are you joining us from today, Steve?
I am in the beautiful location of Menlo Park, California today.
Awesome, man. I love California. I don't know why, but every time I turn on the TV, if I see like a TV show, it's California. It looks awesome. The houses look awesome. The weather looks nice. The sunshine. I don't know. I mean, you guys have a lot of good stuff. And we're out here on the East Coast right now dealing with mugginess and humidity and bugs.
Well, hopefully you don't have the same cost of housing that we have here. It is so expensive to live here. Yeah.
I think New York, DC, and the San Francisco area are among the three most expensive places right now. And it's also some of the hottest areas for property. So we're close. May not be too far away from that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So thank you, Steve, for coming on. And before we get to asking Steve a bunch of stuff that we want to dive into, we want to remind you to subscribe and like. And if you're watching us during the live, go ahead and send us your comments and chat, and we'll go ahead and try to do so. If you've got Steve, if you've got questions for Steve, go ahead and do so. And if you're watching us during the playback, sit back, relax. You're in for a treat today with Steve, myself, and Dave. And if you have questions during the playback, we'll still get back to you. And we'll see if maybe we can get some out to Steve as well, if he could take some of those questions on the playback later and respond. So without further ado, let's go into, Ori, do we want to go into the clips? All right, so let me set this up so you know what you're looking at. So we've got a video that we're going to take a look at from a CEO who has a very large platform, had some thoughts on work from home and what his employees should do. And I want your reaction. I want to see what you think about what Mr. Jamie Dimon has to say, CEO of JP Morgan Chase. Go ahead, Ori, roll that.
Things so dramatically. It accelerated a trend, but it does not work for younger people. It doesn't work for those who want to hustle. It doesn't work in terms of spontaneous idea generation. So
how does it work for your culture in terms of
it doesn't work for culture. Yeah. So I think, we've told people we expect them on May 17th, 1 or 2 days a week. Get used to it. Get your head wrapped around it.
All right. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm not surprised. First off, I have a lot of respect for Jamie Dimon. Jamie Dimon is an incredible leader, and I had a chance to help his team when I was at LinkedIn think through some succession planning ideas and technologies they were building. But here's how I look at this. I think Jamie, what he's doing there is limiting his available market for talent by about 70%. Because most people don't want to be going back in the office. I don't agree that his perception is it's the only way to have a good culture. What I think he's saying is it's the only way I know how to address culture, and the only way I know how to lead a company is everyone being there. And so, and he's not alone in that, honestly, and I feel for a lot of leaders that have never faced something like we're facing right now. I mean, there is no business school that says, hey, we got a concentration in work from home or managing remotely. And so
there
we
was
got
no
to
MBA for that.
That's right. That's right. And so we got to give a little grace to organizations to find the time to navigate this new reality. But what happens for most people is when we're under stress, and I see this all the time as a coach, we tend to revert to what we know. And a lot of businesses, I mean, think about banking being under attack. When you've got Google and Apple and all these PayPals and all these companies coming, Robinhood coming after your business. And then you've got Bitcoin and all these new cryptocurrencies changing the landscape. I think you're a little bit nervous around the future. And so he's probably saying, I know how to lead with everyone in. That's what we're going to do because we're not in a normal environment right now. And I feel more comfortable doing that. And as I said, I really think he's going to limit the number of people that are going to want to work there longer term, but we'll see,
Well, I think you're being very kind to Mr. Dimon because he makes a very strong statement about those people that are working from home, are not at work. Those are his words. They're not at work. And he says they're not hustling, which I've worked from home and a lot of people work from home. And if the thinking is, and I don't know if it's a generational thing, and you could speak to, you've sprinkled yourself through different organizations. If it's a generational thing where folks that are maybe a little older think that you have to be physically present in the office to actually get work done. And if you're not there, then maybe you're goofing off or you have it better than everybody else.
Right. Well, listen, Rolando, I want to start off polite, but if we want to throw the gloves off and get a little aggro here, I mean, you could say, there will be some who'd listen to what he's saying and say it's tone deaf. He's just tone deaf to the reality of, I think, what the workforce is telling us now in most of the sectors that I'm seeing around the world is I do not want to forfeit my freedom of managing my time that I had to be able to grocery shop in the middle of the week instead of stand in line on Sundays, to be able to go get a haircut at a time that works for me, or be able to take a break when I want to take a break. And what I haven't seen him do, or other leaders that are saying everyone come back to the office, and I think Morgan Stanley's doing the same thing, I haven't seen them say, look at the data showing us that we're not as productive or we're not creating as much value. I haven't seen that data to demonstrate that. And I think if you're in a leadership role and you're asking people to come back to work and you don't have a good explanation to why beyond the old because rationale, I think you're in for some backlash. And the people that are voting first, and it's interesting to get your perspective on this, but I think the people that are voting first are the people who don't have a mortgage, they don't have expenses and tuitions and things that they have to pay. They can relocate quickly and do different things. Those are the people that are going to move quickly. The ones that have some of those other financial burdens are going to still vote, but it's going to take them a little time to sort of unplug their current circumstances, maybe change schools, change locations, and change jobs. But I firmly believe that's going to happen. We're going to see more people changing because of the newfound realities of loving working from home and loving the independence and the freedom than we've ever seen before. I call it the great career migration. It's just,
I heard you say something about that. I heard you on one of your TikToks talk about how there is a big migration coming, especially to the United States, where we self-identify with work probably more than other countries, and our work is us and us is work, and it's hard to take them both apart. And in other countries, like for Germany, for example, I heard, and because we have companies that we work with in Germany, it is not uncommon to everybody's gone to the office by 5 and enjoying themselves at a bar, a pub, wherever, outdoors with others, with loved ones, with friends. Where here, it's, in some places, it's frowned. You got to be the last one out the door along with the boss.
Right, because you're not hustling.
You're not hustling.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's a part of me, I love the lifestyle that Europe offers, make no mistake. I love it. And I love what you're talking about, which is you walk in most cities in Europe, you see people gathered in groups talking. And a lot of times in the States, you'll see people sitting at tables looking at a phone and not talking in groups. And it's just more of a communal environment, which is pretty interesting. But I do think you mentioned something that has really caught my attention in the last few months, which is this notion that people in America in particular, we really identify ourselves through the work. I am a such and such at so-and-so organization. And that's been basically eliminated, disaggregated over the course of the pandemic, because who you are and what you do and what your title is needs a social setting for that to be something that's discussed or shared. And we don't have those social settings. And I feel it's been a good time for us to sort of unpack and sort of say, well, that's maybe there's something more meaningful, like spending more time with my loved ones than just, pounding my chest that I'm a so-and-so at a such and such company, and I think it's a healthy change for all of us.
That's right. And I agree with you about change, and I agree with you about culture, but I also want to just roll back a little bit to what you were talking about, numbers, and I just want to put something up to actually validate a little bit of what you're saying. So we took a look at the numbers, and we found 2 surveys amongst the many surveys and studies, and we found that workers are speaking very loudly about this, but this work, not just work-life balance, but going back to the office. We found a survey that was done for Bloomberg just not too long ago, and that in that survey they found 39% of employees would rather quit if they were forced to go back to the office. And that number was even higher amongst those that were younger, millennials and Gen Z, which, and I saw you on a Bloomberg interview talk about this as well, where you have a record number of people voluntarily leaving the workforce in April, which was, and going back many years as they've been keeping record. And that can't be a coincidence that people are very different today than they were 18 months ago before this whole mess started.
Yeah, it is shocking how much the world has changed. Forget work for a second, our personal lives. And I have, 5 kids in my house that are all in various areas of education and schooling. So how their world changed was dramatic. How my attention on their education changed based, compared to before the pandemic. And I think that we already saw the early signs of this even before the pandemic. I mean, the Gen Z and millennial working population has already come down from about 4 years at a company to 2.8, and that's the median. And so we're going to see those numbers continue to come down. And no one I'm talking to, no business leader around the world thinks that's going to change. And that's a big part of, I know we're going to talk about this in the latter part of today's show, but that's a big part of what I'm trying to help leaders understand today through my book, Quake, which is we have this assumption that, and the way the media is portraying what's happening now is they're saying it's the big resignation, right? The little shock effect, resigning. And that's why I'm trying to reframe the language, saying it's actually a big career migration. Yes, people are leaving, but having worked in HR for most of my career, when people leave, good things can happen in your company. New opportunities are created. People can get promoted. You get a chance to hire in new talent and new skills and new people and ideas. That's not a bad thing. But it's just happening for many organizations faster than they're used to. In tech, if someone stays 2.8 years, like we have like a celebrate, what, you're still here? This is amazing, And in some industries, they don't celebrate until you're there 10 years. And now they're having to fight a different battle, which is, wow, we don't have a captive group of people. There was one story on the news I saw recently, which captures it well. It's a fitness center looking to hire a trainer. The manager said, normally when I post the job, I have 15 people and I have choice. Today, I have 2 or 3, and they're not optimal candidates. So now they're going to have to look at a different thing. And to your point, I believe this is all about how we soaked in a new reality for a year and a half and change. And now we're making different life choices. And I don't think this is a blip. I think it's going to continue to play out, and people can. And the other thing is, we can see more of what's possible today with how we can apply our education and our experiences than ever before. And so when you combine that with an opportunity to make more choices, I mean, it's advantage professionals, it's advantage workers today in a big way.
Absolutely.
And it's exciting because if you take some of these folks that are just getting out of college, you know what, maybe they want to work for a company based in the West Coast, but they don't want to leave their New England bubble. And now with the technology and with leaders accepting work from home and being able to get a talent pool that's not just across the country, but across the world. But you have these folks that are now, they have opportunities to get jobs for organizations where they don't have to relocate to have that job at LinkedIn or Google. I think it's an amazing opportunity for both the employees and the employers.
100% agree, Dave. 100% agree. And if you're a recruiter, you're excited because usually your hiring manager says, and they have to live around here, or we have to relocate, or there's a relocation budget. And now, Jamie Dimon aside, most leaders have said, my comfort level managing and leading and recruiting remote staff has been raised. I can see, and I've learned through the pandemic, I can create value with a remote workforce. And so you're right. I think that should benefit both parties. Now, the rub and the unknown dimension to this, which we still aren't going to have an answer with for a few years, which is, well, what does that mean about culture, communication, sense of community, if you're not in contact? We're used to building that together, right? And now we're not. And it's not impossible. And I'm an optimist, and I know you guys are too. I've watched a lot of your shows. Who's to say that what we could build couldn't be better? Maybe there could be better community. We don't know that yet. Right. But a lot of our, we're human, and what we don't know, we usually fear the worst because we don't know, the Jamie Dimon speaking for a lot of those leaders and how he's framing this. They're worried, and that's totally human to be worried. But I think, and this is what I tell a lot of my clients today when they're asking me, well, Steve, what should we do? Should we go hybrid? Should we back to work? Should we be fully remote? And I say, I know what the right answer is, but I don't think you're going to like hearing it, which is the best practice right now is experimentation. Try stuff out, and that's why tech companies, you guys know this, tech companies have been able to pivot and manage moments like the pandemic better because they're always changing. They're always dealing with new stuff, and it's always a little bit crazy. And the pandemic's just another day of crazy. And companies that are not used to that are struggling. And the way I put it is, and this is probably true in the banking world, when you're in big business and there's a lot of money on the line, you need to build for stability, reliability, and predictable outcomes. Of course you should. That's what your board wants. Your shareholders want that. But today what's happening is you need to build for instability. you got to be able to weather crazy. And I think the more remote your team is, the more diverse you are, the more capable you are of handling that diversity. So I think this is an opportunity for people to sort of build that, call it agile muscle, if you will, so that when the next crazy happens, whether, Delta's going to, peak and cause more problems, or we're going to have to revert to more, safety measures or whatever, where there's another recession around the corner, the more you can weather that, I think the better. And now it's a great time for you to rebuild in a better way. Firmly believe.
And I think the word that I think of when I hear you say all those things is resiliency. And I know that being in the tech sector like we are, where things change much faster than, like you said, maybe in the banking sector, where you have your big players, the known players. In tech, a new player pops up every day. Yep. And could upseat the apple cart and turn things around and disrupt things. And I don't think in the banking sector, the finances, you have as much. You do, like you alluded to, Bitcoin and Ethereum. You have the blockchain. All of these things are new players, and it's starting to make some inroads. It hasn't dominated yet, but it's getting there. But they're not used to it. And I think that for the culture, and I think that's one of the things that Mr. Dimon was talking about, the culture. Maybe the culture is different at JP Morgan and those other locations, but the people that are inside of those companies are not immune from the events that happen outside. And I think that those companies like his would be well served to make sure that he retains the top talent. And the top talent may not stay there. Like Dave said, maybe I don't want to be in the city. I love the freedom that work has, and I'm more productive. Every single metric and study put out by, whether it's Deloitte, Ernst & Young, the surveys that I just mentioned. Here's another one. Thank you, Ori. Here's a survey done on JP Morgan, along with some of the top tech companies. In this survey, they asked, hey, would you take a $30,000 raise to go back to the office? And guess what? 64% said no. I'd rather pass on 30. That's not nothing. That's a good chunk of change. That can pay in that year if you're going to you have your kid in private school or college. That could fund that right there. But those people are saying no. An overwhelming majority are saying, nah, I'll pass on that. I'd rather have a little bit more time either to myself or with my family or with an elderly, a loved one. I know it's the case for me. You have loved ones that couldn't take care of themselves, and they came and you watched them during this last 18 months, and it was good because they didn't have anywhere else to go. And that, like you said, it changed people. It certainly changed me, and I know millions of others, as well as I got to believe those employees working for Mr. Dimon.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not surprised by that data. And I think it gets to the chipping away at that notion we talked about in America, where you identify with who you are as based on your work. And now it's shifting to as a husband, as a spouse, as a brother, as a son. I mean, I had to pay much more attention to my parents during the pandemic. We started new family rhythms. I don't know about you guys, but my family sprinkled all over the country. And so we started, weekly Zoom nights, and then we had to, figure out how do we get the closed caption to work, because my dad can't hear very well. So, and we can't go to his house to sort of show him, well, this is what you click to do it. But those things really, they changed us. And what I'm sad to hear when I hear people like Jamie Dimon say our culture, what he's really saying is my culture, the culture that I think we should have. He's not saying the culture that my employees want, right? Mm-hmm. He's saying our culture, and he's taking responsibility. And you guys also saw this play out in two radical approaches that happened in Silicon Valley. Was it Coinbase and Basecamp, two companies that came out in the last 6 months to say, we will not talk about society at work. All that stuff, you can't talk about it here. And if you don't like it, here's a package. You can take it and leave. And in both companies, about 20% of the workforce says, okay, thank you, we're out. But what they were solving for was something worth paying attention to, which is, these discussions of George Floyd and racism and gender equality and things that are wrong in society. Employees saying, we need to talk about this, and we need to take a position and a stance as a company. And their leadership's like, nope, that's a big distraction. And if you don't engage with it in that discussion, you lose. And if you do engage with it, you lose. So we're just going to take it out, and we're just going to focus on work. And to your point, Rolando, like, how do you do that? How do you park society outside? I don't know how you do it. And so I've been really skeptical of, it's an interesting approach. But what I think it's done in both companies is created more of a problem than solving a problem.
Well, I think you can't sanitize what's happening on the world around you. And I'd love to, my folks, that work with us, you can't sanitize what's happening. They're affected, if they get the corona or one of their loved ones, you know what? They're not thinking about his work very well. If
right.
if you have a mom working for you and she's worried about their kids coming down with something or whatever, they can't effectively be working for you. I played sports and I'm all about performance, 100%. What can we get our folks to do so that they perform at the peak level as much as they can? They can't do that if they're sick. You can't run with a football in your hand and be an all pro if you're sick. You can't go tackle and be the Lawrence Taylor if you're sick, right? And if you're sick in body or mind, that affects your work. And from a performance standpoint, it affects your play on the field. And I know it affects your work in an office or remote working if you're not able to do those other things that, make up your mind and your body.
Right. And I think you're getting towards something which I think is one of the best opportunities we have to take advantage of in the pandemic, which is, I think the pandemic has forced all of us to get to know each other and our coworkers on a more personal level. Whether we're seeing the inside of each other's homes on Zoom, Skype, GoToMeeting, whatever, whether we're seeing that or whether we're just recognizing some of the individual challenges we all face, whether someone has immunity compromised health condition or someone needs to get food to a loved one, whatever that is, we're learning more about each other. And I think that will long term, that's going to benefit us. Because I'm a huge sports fan, just like you are. And that's how I got into human resources. Everything about HR is all about sports, which is, identifying how to build a great team and who works well together and what kind of leaders pair well with good kinds of teams and what kind of environments produce the best outcomes for people. And what I'm seeing the pandemic do for a lot of leaders is force them to check in with their people and say, are you okay? Because as you said, if someone's not okay, someone's sick, someone's education is suffering at home, they're not going to be able to deliver value to you until that gets solved. So we need to help our people solve those problems. And this gets into this notion of community, which I think is really going to be enhanced because of our greater awareness of one another through the pandemic.
Agreed, 100%. And it's a good segue to your book, because your book is full of things about community, talking about the lives of people live and how that interacts with employers and a culture. I mean, you address culture in your book. One of the things, if I can read a little passage from your book here, you talk about the learning agility and growth mindset. And you quote Kelly Palmer about this, and you say, Kelly Palmer recently told me that the most important skill people need to develop is something she calls learning agility. And then you have some bullet points on it, but I wanted you to expand on that, because I think learning, and you say this through the book, it's a continuous process. And learning is not just happening in the classroom. It's not happening in, just in an Ivy League school anymore. Or university. It's happening on a daily basis within organizations and the things that affect it. Like right now in this situation that we're all moving into, like a web 3.0 with business, with tech, with people's lives, and all of that converging in a way that never has.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And that is such a great opportunity for me to sort of say, well, like, why did I write this book? I wrote this book because many of my friends, family, colleagues are becoming more afraid and anxious about the future of work. And I'm like, I wanted to unbundle that. I wanted to package that and reframe it in a way that's more inspirational and more motivational. And one of the biggest roadblocks for people feeling comfortable about the future is we don't know what skills we're going to need tomorrow to be vital, to have really good careers. And we're always hearing, oh, you need to know blockchain, you need to know Python programming, you need to know this new thing, or my daddy just can't stand all these new phone things. He's using some Android from like the 80s or something like that. And he doesn't want to, be told I got to learn all this new stuff. But, if you boil it down, what I was trying to do in that part of the book is explain, listen, the world of business is changing fast. We can't stop that. New skills are going to be needed. We can't stop that. So your advantage is not to chase what new hot skill you need to build. Your advantage is becoming more aware that the faster you learn something, the more valuable you're going to become, because we know you're going to need to learn something new. So as someone who's recruited thousands of people over my career, I can tell you that the shelf life of a job description is probably 2 months at best. And then the job changes and you do new things. And so who do you need to hire if you know your job's going to change, your company's going to change? And if you step back and look at all the unicorns that are out there, 95% of those unicorns are not in the business today that they started out to be in. So they needed to pivot, they needed to change, and they probably needed new people with bringing in new skills. And so what I'm trying to tell people here is, listen, you want to be more vital for tomorrow. You got to recognize it's your ability to learn stuff fast and apply it. That's going to make you more valuable. It's not the what, it's the how. Right. And that's just investing in yourself and being, having the growth mindset, just always being curious. And I was always tired of people saying, Steve, you need to be a lifelong learner. I'm like, well, what the heck does that mean? Like,
you'd be in a classroom all day long.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know what are you talking about? Like, I'm learning new stuff every day. Like, what does that actually mean? And so I try to give examples of how people can lead a life where you're doing that and appreciating that. Whether you're volunteering, whether you're educating, whether you're just hanging out with friends, watching your kids play sports, there's opportunities for you to ask questions and learn what other people are doing. That's going to just make you more valuable or able to see new opportunities for yourself. So that was kind of what was behind that sort of learning agility, if you will.
I want to pick your brain on something that I know that for me, it's a fascinating thing. Talk about curiosity and how that all plays out. In the book, you also talk about, and I'm sure a lot of folks watching this want to know, okay, you spent your time at LinkedIn, what that was like. And you gave us a small window to that. And I just want to read a small passage of that where you're talking about meetings and how that all played out. You mentioned that you had at least 20 different ways of running the company. And to me, I find that nuts. Like, you'd have meetings about meetings. And you had 20 different iterations of that. And you say, that's not, okay. Then I don't know how you all came to agree. And you actually, I do, because I read the rest of the book. You talk about that, but I want you to talk about that mindset because it's relevant to what you just said. Curiosity, how do we make this work? How do we come up with a playbook that works for our organization, probably unique to what we're doing as a mission statement, as what we want to take to the board, as well as what we want to do with our customers?
Yeah, it's such a great question. Thank you for teeing that up. When I look back at the LinkedIn experience, for me, it was radically different from my journey. Prior was mainly big companies. And when you're in a big company, what you do is you go in and you kind of fix what people did before you, and you tune it and you try to make it more current. And when you're in a startup like we were at LinkedIn, I mean, you're building something from nothing. And we didn't know how to run the company. And what I was dealing with were Google refugees, Yahoo refugees, Oracle refugees, people and Adobe refugees, and I was a Cisco refugee. And what we knew more was what we didn't want to do. We didn't know how we should do it. And none of us had ever taken a company public before. And so that section of the book I love because it was very frustrating to me at the time, Rolando, because I'm like, what? We can't figure out how to hold a meeting. And this was the meeting where the executive, like, this is how you run a company when you're young and you're growing, which is the executives that are leading all their functions get together and talk about what's important and make decisions that affect the course of your business. And so we experimented, how long should it be? Who should be there? Who should own the agenda? What should we talk about? Should we just go around and everyone give an update? And we experimented. And at the time, as I said, I was so frustrated. Like, I was looking at the CEO, like, why can't you just make a decision? You're getting paid all this money. It's your company. And it was really, honestly, it was very frustrating. It probably wasn't until a few years after I sat back and said, man, that was the greatest thing that we did, because after about 2 years, we landed on a methodology and a rhythm that was so perfect, not just because of what we arrived at, but how we got there. Everyone believed this was the best way to do it. No one was saying, oh, I hate the meetings. No, everyone's like, hey, we all built this together. And this is the heartbeat of the organization and how we're making the most important decisions. And that was really interesting to me. And it gets at what I know you guys care a lot about, which is, the culture of an organization. Like, how do you build that? And we all contributed to it. And it was a lot of arguing and negotiation and disagreement, and trial and error, and things worked and sometimes it didn't work. But when we finally settled on that, and again, it took us about 2 years. And a lot of times people say, oh, well, what was it? What did you settle on? I said, that's not the point. The point was how we got there. Exactly. Was that. And that plays into, when we're talking about what is the future of work right now, should it be hybrid and fully remote or what? I'm like, well, you got to try a bunch of stuff out. You don't know. Yeah. Different departments are going to do great at home. Different departments need to be in certain days a week. And hybrid itself is not just a category. There's thousands of versions of what hybrid could look like. What days, what hours, who's in, where are you going to be? And so, you got to just try it out. And that feels really uncomfortable for people who are not used to experimenting. And as we talked about, what I had at LinkedIn was a bunch of people who are used to building software where what you do, you A/B test. Does this work with this client? Does this work with that client? Okay, A/B. Okay, A works. Okay, let's double down on A and then split that up into another A/B. And then we learn and we get smarter and we iterate.
Yeah, I think, just the companies that you're talking about are also, again, I'm wondering if some of this, yes, Teck. Because Teck, you're constantly A/B testing. You're constantly, you're retesting the theory. Okay, that worked. And then, okay, how many colors of black can we use? We know black works, but maybe the lighter, there's a whole bunch of gradients of black that we could use, and which customers respond to that. So you're used to that. I wonder if that's, like I said, it's a Teck and the younger crowd, because like we saw that in a survey, more people feel like they would stay at home, right? Versus the non-tech industries. I used to work at Philip Morris and had nothing to do with tech, nothing to do with A/B testing. It was all about customers' desires and how to respond to that. The last thing you want to think about is split testing, and do that on a regular basis to see what works, because customer demand changes now much faster than ever. So I don't know. That's just, I'd love to ask you about that, because you have a window into much more boardrooms than I do.
Well, I got a great example to give you, and this just happened a couple of weeks ago. In the last 2 weeks, I'm working with a major multinational organization. It's the Latin American arm of this organization, and they're in the pharmaceutical division. And they're asking me, what should we do about future work, and how do you think about it? And should we be, how should we structure this, and how should we think about it? And I said, well, let's talk about how you create value in your department. You've got pharmacists, PhDs, lab, experts, and they're creating new drugs. So how do they do that? I said, and they said, well, they experiment. I was like, that's right. I said, so that's what you're going to need to do here. You're going to have to look at work like a laboratory right now and experiment, because everyone's needs just shifted. The person that left for the pandemic's not the person coming back. And you have to see, can you create value in different ways? Now, you can pull the ripcord like Jamie Dimon, say everyone back, but I don't think that's going to serve you well, because people have changed in their recognition of how to do work has evolved. And so, when I think about that, that's how I'm thinking about it. That even these bigger organizations, and I do believe what Mark Andreessen said a couple of decades ago, that software is eating the world. Every company really is becoming a tech company, and data is your competitive advantage, right? Look at Walmart. You don't think 100%. Walmart's a tech company, but Walmart has the greatest volume of retail data in the world. And they have thousands of developers. The challenge is let's take banks, for example. Banks were told by the expensive consultants 20 years ago, outsource the data to India, much cheaper, lower cost wages. Let's go send it to Wipro, Infosys. Right. And then the banks are waking up to realize, oh my gosh, our competitive advantage is our consumer behavior, how they're doing it. The bank is now on a phone. Where's our data? Oh, it's in India. What do we know about phones? Oh, nothing.
You're totally right. Oops.
Mm-hmm.
Well, other companies have started that pattern of insourcing and bringing that work back into the U.S. And I think that with the labor markets getting even tighter, as people shift their attitudes towards work, that's only going to become even worse, more amplified, where you're going to see more and more, not so much labor shortage, but people just choosing to work differently, like you said. Now, I know that you've got a bunch of other interviews you got today, so I want to run right into the fun, like the really fun part of this is when we have guests on, we get to ask them a few questions just so people could get a little bit more of a flavor of who you are and your likes and things like that. So, Ori, ready to roll with those questions? It's just no wrong answer here. Just a series of questions.
Rapid fire.
Yeah. Rapid fire. What's your favorite musician or musical group?
Favorite musician, probably right now, musical group is going to be the Killers.
Oh, the Killers. I've never heard of them, but what kind of genre is that?
It's probably, I don't know, sort of new age rock, I would say, sort of in the genre of a Coldplay and a U2.
Oh,
Yep.
I like Coldplay. All right. Your favorite app on your phone?
The favorite app on my phone, LinkedIn. Sorry. Wah, wah.
No, that's you're on LinkedIn. I know I see you posting regularly. I'm on LinkedIn.
TikTok is a very close second, and it's superseding it. Yeah.
Well, LinkedIn is not immune from what's happening at TikTok, and
That's right.
expect that changes are coming because all the other platforms are adjusting their stuff around what TikTok is doing. Favorite food?
Favorite food, Mexican, without a doubt. I could eat it 3-4 meals a day.
And you're in a great DC does not hold a candle to what you've got out there on the West Coast.
Yeah.
I've been in both places and a lot of restaurants, and West Coast got us beat on the Mexican side right now. Okay, and then last question: what's your this is a multiple choice? What's your preferred method of communication? Email, text, phone call, instant message, or DM?
Text.
You like text, okay? It's still, I've been reading how it's the most effective way to market to people today. And a lot of people are getting into text, which seems old, but old is new. Audio is old, but new again. So that's an interesting thing.
It's interesting. I have a new business partner, Shane Howard. He's my new business manager agent. We make decisions and share information over text now. And I'm thinking, like, should we move that to some sort of different, format? But it works for us. I've never had a business relationship that's mostly text based, but it's pretty cool. It works.
Interesting. Yeah. But if you've seen any clip or video of Gary Vaynerchuk, he's saying at the end, "Text me." So it's a thing. Yeah. It's a thing that if he's onto it, that means there's something there, something's happening there, and you're probably onto it too. So I want to thank Steve for coming on board and giving us some knowledge today, enlightening us about the future of work, sharing his thoughts about his book, Quake. So if you are looking to the deep dive into what this all means, how you can use it for yourself, maybe you're an employer, you've got folks that are younger and the young crowd, and they're ready to head out the doors because they want to work from home, I think this will help you understand a little bit more about what to do with culture, what you did at LinkedIn, and how that all shook out, because it seemed like LinkedIn did pretty well, right?
Yeah, fortunately.
They did okay. They're doing okay. So, Ori, we're going to the CTA, or are we going to the trivia? Okay, so let's do this trivia here. Well, I would love to hear what Steve says the answer is on this one.
So
Go ahead,
Steve,
Teck.
so within these 4 companies, who has the highest percentage of employees who want to work at home permanently? Do you have what would your guess?
I'm going to guess Microsoft, because they've been around the longest and they've got more people that are probably like craving this. But I could make an argument for why anyone could win, but I'm going to pick B, Microsoft.
Well, according to the study's finding, about 64% of Amazon workers, they prefer permanent work from home. 62% say from Microsoft, 67% of Google employees, and Apple would rather take permanent work from home with sorry, I'm reading 2 different things. So it was Apple at 69%, and then Salesforce employees, actually, they were number one at 76% would permanently work from home. But again, they would want to work at home, not necessarily that will be the case moving forward.
Well, that's interesting because Salesforce owns a ton of new buildings, so it'd be interesting to see how that plays out.
I think that's why one reason some of these CEOs want people to come back home. They have to reduce those buildings, right? Or lease floor space out, or say, maybe that investment we made wasn't the best investment today. So we'll have to see what happens. I think
Yeah.
hybrid is the way to go. But you said there's many iterations of hybrid, so we'll have to see how this all plays out in the coming weeks and months. So, Steve, thank you for being such a wonderful sport. We would love to have you on again. I wish I had more time with you because there's like 20 more things I want to talk to you about. But
Let's
I'm
do it.
mindful of, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You can come on anytime you want. You just let me know. We'll have you on again. And and I want to let you know, if you like this content, we would love to see your support with this. And just hit like, subscribe, hit all the bells and whistles, all that good stuff, all that, because you know what? We may release, and we actually do release, nuggets throughout the week that you can only get if you're subscribed and you get that notification so that you know what's going on. Maybe we sneak in a little bit of extra overtime with Steve. We have other tidbits that come out. So be on the inside and get to know what's going on. All right. So, and what we've also got for you in store, if you've stuck around to the end and you're watching us on the playback today, we've got some other videos. Where am I pointing to, Ori? Right here? Oh, well, yeah, that's a good one. Steve, people want to know if you're on LinkedIn, where can people find you? If they can't text you like your partner, where can they look for you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. If you're connected with me, then you've got my phone number, because I do have my cell phone number on my LinkedIn profile for those people connected. Or you go to stevecadigan.com, my website, and I'm pretty responsive. So if you got a question or something that I can, weigh in on, please ping me, and I try to get back to all inquiries within 24 hours.
Awesome.
And Steve, congratulations again on the book. I want to tell the viewers again, you can order that on Amazon, or you can get that pretty soon within your local Barnes & Noble.
That's right. That's right. And you can watch Steve on TikTok. Has some really good TikToks. I love that, man. You got to give me some coaching on the TikToks.
I never thought it was going to evolve. Honestly, I thought, well, teenage lip syncers are not going to like my stuff, and it started to take off. I'm happy to report. Yeah.
No, you're kicking butt, man. You got like 100,000 followers or something like that on TikTok.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
kudos to you. Get into coaching about TikTok, how to make a TikTok. So still, Steve, I know we could talk for a long time here. So thank you for coming in. And Ori, are we shooting it to the, rolling it to the next stuff? Okay, let me make sure I'm pointing in the right direction. So if you're stuck around, there's some more helpful videos that we have for you. If you want to learn about, let me see. Here we go. This is my other side. So if you stuck around, we've got some other episodes that will help you on your journey, whether you're looking for a device, you want to know more about remote working and the tools that you need in order to be effective at remote working. Thanks for joining us today. See you on the next episode.